The unexpected welcome. The Vorthok Empire had conquered 17 star systems in the past decade. Their dark metallic warships, each one larger than most space stations, moved through the void with the confidence of absolute power. Admiral Crystal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's Fist, watching the tactical display show their approach to the Kepler 442 system. His forearms crossed behind his back, his crimson eyes studying the data with cold calculation. Admiral General Vexamer approached, his heavy footsteps echoing through the bridge. Our scouts report unusual activity in this system. The inhabitants call themselves humans, and they appear to have established some form of colony on the fourth planet. Crystal's mandibles clicked in what passed for amusement among his species. Another primitive species playing at civilization. How many ships do they have? Approximately 50 vessels, sir. Small to medium class. Nothing that registers as a significant threat on our sensors. 50 ships, Crystal repeated, his voice carrying the weight of countless victories. We bring 300 of the Empire's finest warships, and they have 50. This will be over before the day cycle ends. The Vorthok fleet emerged from hyperspace like a dark cloud, their massive vessels blocking out the light from the system's star. Each ship bristled with weapons, capable of cracking planetary crusts, their shields humming with enough energy to power entire civilizations. The formation was perfect, intimidating, designed to strike fear into the hearts of any species that dared to look upon it. On the fourth planet, in the human colony of New Horizons, the arrival was detected immediately. Captain Sarah Chen was in the middle of her morning coffee when Lieutenant Marcus Webb burst into her office aboard the exploration vessel Wanderer's Dream. Captain, we've got company, Webb said, his voice carrying more curiosity than alarm. Big company, really big. Sarah set down her mug and looked at the tactical display Webb had pulled up on her wall screen. The sight that greeted her was certainly impressive. 300 alien warships, each one looking like it could probably take on half their fleet single-handedly. She whistled low. Well, that's something you don't see every day, she said, settling back in her chair. Have they tried to communicate? Just started, ma'am. They're broadcasting on all frequencies. Universal Translator is working on it now. The speakers crackled to life, and Admiral Crystal's voice filled the room. The translation software gave his words a mechanical quality, but the imperial arrogance came through clearly. Primitive inhabitants of this system, you now stand before the might of the Vorthok Empire. Your worlds, your resources, your very lives belong to us now. You have one solar rotation to surrender completely and prepare for integration into our domain. Resistance will result in the complete annihilation of your species. You will broadcast your unconditional surrender on all frequencies and prepare to receive our occupation forces. Sarah blinked, looked at Webb, then back at the screen. A smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. Did he seriously just demand we surrender in one day, or he'll wipe us out? Webb was grinning now too. Yes, ma'am, that's exactly what he said, and he said it with such dramatic flair too. You will broadcast your unconditional surrender. I mean, who talks like that? Someone who's watched too many old Earth movies about evil empires, apparently. Sarah leaned forward and activated the communication system. This is Captain Sarah Chen of the human vessel Wanderer's Dream. We received your message, and I have to say, that was quite the introduction. Very dramatic. Did you guys practice that speech, or does it just come naturally? On the bridge of the Dominion's Fist, Every Vorthok officer froze. In all their years of conquest, in all their encounters with dozens of species across the galaxy, no one had ever responded to their demands with what sounded distinctly like ... amusement. Crystal S. Mandibles clenched. Repeat that transmission. The human voice came through again, and this time there was definitely laughter in the background. We're actually pretty new to this whole first contact thing, so forgive us if we're not following protocol. But did you really just show up with 300 warships to demand we surrender? That seems like overkill for a colony of about 50,000 people. They're mocking us, Vexima growled, his own forearms tensing. No species has ever dared to mock the Empire. Perhaps they don't understand the gravity of their situation, Crystal said, though his voice carried a note of uncertainty. We will demonstrate our power. Prepare the convergence cannons. Target their largest vessel. Back on the Wanderer's Dream, Webb was monitoring the alien fleet's energy signatures. Captain, they're powering up weapons. Big ones. Are they now? Sarah finished her coffee and stood up. Well, I suppose we should probably raise shields then. Can't have our new friends accidentally hurting someone. Shields up, ma'am. Should I alert the fleet? Sure, but keep it casual. No need to get everyone worked up over a misunderstanding. The Vorthok convergence cannon fired, a beam of concentrated energy that had previously vaporized entire asteroids. It streaked across space toward the Wanderer's Dream with enough force to reduce the ship to component atoms. The human shields absorbed it completely, not deflected, not partially blocked, absorbed as if the massive energy discharge had been nothing more than a gentle spring breeze. On the Vorthok flagship, alarms began sounding. Officers scrambled to check their instruments, certain that something had malfunctioned. The energy readings from their most powerful weapon showed it had fired correctly, but the target was completely unharmed. What just happened? Crix demanded. Sir, our convergence cannon fired successfully, but their shields absorbed the entire blast. The energy dissipated harmlessly. That's impossible. Our convergence cannons can crack planetary shields. Sir, their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than our initial assessments suggested. Meanwhile, on the human ship, Sarah was back to sipping her coffee, while Webb checked the shield status. Any damage? She asked. None, ma'am. Shields barely registered the hit. Actually, the energy absorption efficiency was better than expected. Engineering says we could probably take about 1,000 more hits like that before we'd need to worry. Sarah activated the communication system again. Thanks for the light show, folks. Very impressive. Though I have to ask, was that supposed to be some kind of demonstration? Because if so, you might want to recalibrate your weapons. That barely registered on our sensors. The bridge of the Dominion's fist fell silent. Every officer stared at their instruments, then at each other, then at Admiral Crystal. In the 300-year history of the Vorthok Empire, no one had ever casually dismissed their most powerful weapon as barely registering. Sir, Vexima said quietly, perhaps we should reconsider our approach. Reconsider, Crystal's voice rose an octave. We are the Vorthok Empire. We have conquered 17 star systems. We do not reconsider our approach to primitives. With respect, Admiral, they may not be as primitive as we assumed. The human voice came through the speakers again, and this time there was definitely amusement in it. Look, we appreciate that whole intimidating empire thing you've got going on, but maybe we could try a different approach. How about you come over for coffee? We've got some really good stuff from our hydroponics bays, and we could talk about this whole situation like civilized beings. They're inviting us for coffee, Webb reported, unnecessarily. Coffee, Crystal repeated slowly. They just absorbed our most powerful weapon, and they're inviting us for coffee. It's very good coffee, sir, the human voice added helpfully. We've been working on the blend for months. For the first time in his military career, Admiral Crystal found himself completely without words. His species had faced energy beings, hive minds, and warrior cultures that fought to the death. But they had never encountered a species that responded to overwhelming military force with casual friendliness and offers of hot beverages. Admiral, his communications officer reported, "We're receiving multiple transmissions from the human fleet. They're sharing recipes, coffee recipes, sir, and something called cookies. They seem to think we might be hungry after our long journey." Crickstar looked around his bridge at his officers, all of whom were staring at their instruments, with expressions of bewilderment. The humans weren't just unafraid of the Empire's might. They were treating the entire encounter like a social gathering. "Sir," Vexima said carefully, "in all our military history, we've never encountered a response quite like this." "You think they're insane?" Crystal asked. "I think," Vexima said slowly, "they're either completely insane or they're so far beyond our capabilities that they genuinely don't consider us a threat." On the Wanderer's Dream, Sarah was reading through the initial cultural exchange reports her xenobiologists had prepared. The Vorthok Empire apparently had a rigid military hierarchy, a history of conquest, and a culture built around the demonstration of superior force. They were probably expecting fear, desperation, or at least some kind of appropriately dramatic response. "Lieutenant Webb," she said, "patch me through to the colony administrator. I think we need to put together a proper welcome committee." "Welcome committee, ma'am, of course. These folks have traveled who knows how many light years to visit us. The least we can do is make them feel welcome." Webb paused. "Captain, they did just threaten to annihilate our species. Marcus, they're clearly operating under some kind of cultural misunderstanding. They think the way to make friends is to show up with overwhelming force and demand submission. It's probably worked for them before, but that's not how we do things." "How do we do things?" Sarah grinned. "We make friends the human way, with coffee, good food, and lots of questions about their culture. Trust me, by the time we're done, they'll be wondering why they ever thought conquest was a good idea." Asterisk, when laughter becomes legendary, 3 hours later. Admiral Crystal stood in the docking bay of the Wanderer's Dream, surrounded by his most elite guards, trying to process what had just happened. The humans had not only accepted his request for a diplomatic meeting, but had sent a shuttle to escort his party over. The shuttle pilot, a cheerful human woman named Rodriguez, had spent the entire journey asking about Vorthok culture, their homeworld, and whether they'd ever tried pizza. Admiral Captain Chen approached with a warm smile, extending her hand in the human gesture of greeting. "Welcome aboard the Wanderer's Dream. I'm Sarah Chen. Thank you for accepting our invitation." Crystal stared at the extended hand, then at the woman who had just thanked him for accepting an invitation that he had demanded. Behind her, dozens of human crew members were going about their duties with casual efficiency, many of them glancing over with curious but friendly expressions. "You, invited us," he said slowly. "Of course. First contact is always exciting. We've been hoping to meet our galactic neighbors for years." Sarah gestured toward the corridor. "Come on, let's get you settled. The mess hall is this way," and Chef Martinez has been working on something special. As they walked through the ship, Crystal found himself studying everything with professional interest. The humans' technology was indeed more advanced than anything in the Empire's archives, but what struck him most was the atmosphere. There was no fear, no tension, no sense of a ship on military alert. Crew members nodded politely as they passed, and several actually smiled. "Your crew seems very relaxed," General Vexmer observed. "Why wouldn't they be?" Sarah asked. "We're making new friends. That's cause for celebration, not concern." They entered the mess hall, where about 30 human crew members were gathered around several tables. The moment they saw the Vorthok delegation, a cheer went up. "Welcome to the neighborhood," someone called out. "Hope you're hungry," another added. "We've got questions about your ship design." Crystal's guards tensed, but the humans' enthusiasm was so genuine that even the most paranoid military mind couldn't interpret it as a threat. Lieutenant Webb approached carrying a tray of steaming mugs. "Coffee, as promised," he said, offering the tray. "Fair warning, it's pretty strong. We've been perfecting the blend for months." One of Crystal's guards performed a quick scan of the beverages, then nodded to indicate they were safe. The Admiral accepted a mug, inhaled the rich aroma, and took a cautious sip. It was, he had to admit, exceptional coffee. "This is very good," he said, and the humans beamed as if he'd just given them the highest military honor. "Wait until you try the cookies," Sarah said, settling into a chair at the main table. "Chef Martinez is convinced they're the key to galactic peace." Over the next hour, something unprecedented happened in the long history of the Vorthok Empire. Admiral Crystal found himself engaged in casual conversation with beings he had intended to conquer. The humans asked endless questions about Vorthok culture, their homeworld, their technology, and their experiences in space. They shared stories of their own journey to the stars, their struggles with establishing the colony, and their hopes for the future. "So let me get this straight," Sarah said, leaning forward with interest. "Your entire empire is built around the principle that stronger civilizations should rule weaker ones." "It is the natural order," Crystal replied, though his voice carried less conviction than usual. "The strong protects the weak by guiding them. But what if the weak don't want to be guided? Then they are destroyed, and the galaxy becomes more efficient." The humans exchanged glances, and Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "That's certainly one way to look at it. But what about cooperation? What about the idea that different species might have different strengths that could benefit everyone? The Empire provides all necessary strengths." "Does it though?" Webb asked, pulling up a holographic display. "I've been looking at your ship designs, and they're incredibly impressive from a military standpoint. But your life support systems are really inefficient compared to ours. And your energy distribution could be optimized by about 30% with some minor modifications." "You're analyzing our military vessels?" Vexmer asked, his tone sharpening. "Of course," Webb replied, cheerfully. "That's what we do when we meet new technology. We study it, learn from it, and see how we can improve both our designs and yours. Want to see what we've come up with?" For the next 2 hours, the humans proceeded to give the Vorthok delegation a comprehensive technical briefing on how their military technology could be improved. They pointed out inefficiencies, suggested modifications, and offered to share several innovations that would significantly enhance the Empire's capabilities. "Why?" Crystal finally asked. "Why would you help us become more powerful?" "Because that's what friends do," Sarah said simply. "They help each other become better, but we threatened to destroy you." "Did you though?" Sarah asked. Or were you just following the only diplomatic protocol you knew? I mean, it's not like your species has a reputation for being particularly evil or cruel. Your conquest history suggests you actually take pretty good care of the civilizations you absorb. Crystal stared at her. You've studied our history. Of course, first thing we did when we detected your ships. Your empire has actually improved living conditions on most of the worlds you've conquered. Lower crime rates, better infrastructure, more efficient resource distribution. You're not villains, you're just really bad at making friends. We are a military empire, Vexima said stiffly. And we're a civilian democracy, Sarah replied. Doesn't mean we can't find common ground. At that moment, alarms began sounding. Throughout the ship, Webb immediately activated his communication panel. Captain, we've got trouble. Long-range sensors are picking up an unidentified fleet approaching from the outer system. Configuration doesn't match any known species. Sarah stood up. How many ships? Approximately 200, ma'am. They're moving fast and not responding to hails. Crystal was on his feet as well. Unknown fleet. Not one of ours, Sarah confirmed, and not registered in any of our databases. Webb, what's there? ETA, approximately 4 hours, ma'am. Well, Sarah said, turning to the Vorthok delegation, looks like we might have a real problem on our hands. Any chance you folks would be interested in a temporary alliance? You want to work with us? Crystal asked. Why not? You've got superior firepower. We've got superior technology. Together, we might be able to figure out what these newcomers want without anyone getting hurt. And if they prove hostile, Sarah's smile took on a slightly sharper edge. Then we'll show them what happens when you mess with the Neighborhood Watch program. 2 hours later, the combined human Vorthok fleet was positioned in a defensive formation unlike anything either species had ever deployed. Human ships, with their advanced shields and sensors, formed the outer perimeter. Vorthok vessels, with their massive weapons and armor, anchored the inner defense grid. The two fleets were sharing tactical data, coordinating targeting systems, and working together with an efficiency that surprised everyone involved. This is unprecedented, Vexima observed from the bridge of the Dominion's fist. Our tactical coordination with the humans is actually superior to our coordination with other Empire fleets. Their command structure is very different from ours, Crystal noted. Less hierarchical, more collaborative. It's ... effective. The approaching fleet finally responded to communication attempts. The voice that came through the speakers was cold, mechanical, and utterly without emotion. Unknown vessels, you are in violation of collective territory. Withdraw immediately or be assimilated. Assimilated? Sarah asked over the joint communication channel. That doesn't sound friendly. The collective does not negotiate, the voice continued. You will surrender your vessels and submit to integration. Resistance is futile. Oh, for crying out loud, Webb muttered. Are we seriously dealing with space zombies now? Space zombies, Crystal asked. Collective consciousness, forced assimilation, mechanical voices saying resistance is futile. Sarah explained. It's like someone took every bad science fiction cliché and made it real. Should we attempt diplomacy? Veximor asked, with a collective that assimilates other species by force. Sarah shook her head. I don't think these are the kind of neighbors you invite over for coffee. The collective fleet opened fire without further warning. Their weapons were different from anything either humans or Vorthok had encountered, energy disruptors that seemed designed to specifically target biological neural networks. Clever, Webb observed as the human shields absorbed the attack. They're trying to knock out our crews without damaging our ships. They want to capture our vessels intact. Our shields are holding, Crickstar reported, but these weapons are having some effect on our crew. Neural disruption is causing disorientation. Try rerouting power through your secondary systems, Sarah suggested. We can share our shield harmonics to help protect your crews. For the next hour, the battle raged with an intensity that surprised everyone. The collective was relentless, methodical, and apparently had unlimited resources. But the combined human Vorthok fleet was proving to be more than a match for their tactics. They're adapting to our attacks, Vexamar reported. Standard Imperial doctrine would be to retreat and regroup. Good thing we're not following standard Imperial doctrine, Sarah replied. Webb, have you figured out their command structure? Working on it, ma'am. They appear to have a central coordination vessel about 2 kilometers behind their main line. If we could disrupt that, the entire fleet would lose coordination, Crickstal finished. But it's heavily defended. Not from the right angle, Sarah said, studying the tactical display. Admiral, what if we created a diversion with your main fleet while a small group of our ships tried to reach their command vessel? That would be extremely dangerous for your ships. That's what friends are for. The plan worked perfectly. The Vorthok fleet engaged the main collective force with devastating effect, their massive weapons tearing through the enemy formations. Meanwhile, 3 human ships used their superior speed and maneuverability to slip through the chaos and target the collective command vessel. The disruption was immediate and complete. The collective fleet simply stopped fighting. Their ships drifted aimlessly, their crews apparently cut off from their central coordination. Well, Sarah said, as the combined fleet regrouped, that was educational. Indeed, Crickstal agreed. The humans of Earth have a saying, do they not? The enemy of my enemy is my friend. Something like that. Though I'd prefer to think of it as neighbors helping neighbors. 3 days later, Admiral Crickstal stood in the communications center of the Dominion's Fist, preparing to file his report to the Vorthok High Command. General Vexamer stood beside him, both of them still trying to process what had happened. Sir, Vexamer said quietly, what exactly are we going to tell them? The truth, Crickstal replied, that we encountered a species that responded to our show of force with laughter, friendship, and an offer to share coffee. That they casually absorbed our most powerful weapons and then invited us to dinner. That when faced with a real threat, they stood with us as allies without a moment's hesitation. And what about the conquest? Crickstal was quiet for a long moment. I think, he said finally, that we may have been approaching this whole civilization thing wrong. Perhaps it's time the Empire learned a new way to make friends, by offering coffee instead of demanding surrender. It's a start. As the fleet prepared to depart, carrying news of humanity back to the Empire, they left behind something unprecedented in their long history, a standing invitation to return, not as conquerors, but as friends. The humans, for their part, were already planning their next coffee blend. They had a feeling they were going to have a lot more visitors in the future. Word spread quickly through the galactic community. The Vorthok Empire, terror of 17 star systems, had met a species that laughed at their threats and offered them coffee. The humans, who had faced down one of the most powerful military forces in the galaxy with nothing but friendship and superior technology, had made allies instead of enemies. And somewhere in the vast expanse of space, other species began to wonder, what kind of people were these humans, and could they really be as fascinating as the stories suggested? The answer, as many would soon discover, was that they were even more interesting than the stories indicated. After all, any species that could turn a potential conquest into a coffee date was clearly worth getting to know. The legend of the humans who laughed at the Empire was just beginning. Asterisk.
First contact misconceptions. The observation deck of the Valderan flagship, Eternal Dominance, offered an unparalleled view of the assembled armada. Commander Vex Krell stood with his 4 arms clasped behind his back, his scaled skin reflecting the ambient light as he surveyed his fleet of 30 warships. The Valderan Dominion had expanded across 17 star systems over 3 centuries, encountering and subjugating 6 lesser species. None had presented a significant challenge, and Krell saw no reason why this newly discovered civilization would be any different. Intelligence report, Analyst Mira, Krell commanded, his vertical pupils narrowing as he turned to face his senior intelligence officer. Analyst Mira activated her data terminal, projecting a holographic display of a blue-green planet. This species calls themselves humans. Commander, they have only achieved faster than light travel within the last 70 years. Our long-range scans indicate rudimentary shield technology and conventional weapon systems. Their communication networks are remarkably open, allowing us to intercept and translate much of their data. Military capabilities, Krell inquired, mandibles clicking with anticipation. Limited, Commander. We detect approximately 200 vessels spread across their 12 colonized systems. Most appear to be transport or science vessels with minimal armaments. Their military doctrine seems defensive rather than expansionist. Krell's secondary eyes blinked in sequence, a sign of satisfaction among his kind. Typical of immature species, they waste resources protecting every outpost rather than concentrating force where it matters. He gestured toward the tactical display. We will make our approach through this system, designated HC3 in their terminology. It contains a small outpost with minimal defenses, a perfect demonstration of Dominion superiority. Sir, Mira hesitated, her cranial ridges pulsing with concern. Shouldn't we first attempt diplomatic contact? The Dominion protocol for first encounters is at my discretion, Krell interrupted. History has shown that decisive action prevents prolonged resistance. These humans will understand their place in the cosmic hierarchy more quickly through demonstration than negotiation. The command staff acknowledged his decision with synchronized salutes. The Valderan way was clear. Expansion brought stability, and resistance merely delayed the inevitable. Lesser species ultimately benefited from Valderan guidance, whether they initially recognized it or not. 3 standard days later, the Valderan fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the HC3 system. Long-range scanners immediately began cataloging the system's features: a main sequence star, 7 planets, and an asteroid belt rich with mining potential. Contact detected, announced the sensor officer. Single vessel, approaching from the direction of the 4th planet. Krell leaned forward in his command chair. Classification: unknown configuration. Commander, size suggests a patrol vessel or light frigate. Energy readings are unusual. Unusual how? Krell demanded. The sensor officer's skin flushed a deeper blue, indicating confusion. Their power signature doesn't match our projections for their technology level. It's more concentrated, more efficient. A prototype perhaps, Krell dismissed. Put it on screen. The main display activated, revealing a sleek vessel approximately 1/4 the size of the Eternal Dominance. Its hull was dark gray with minimal external features, giving it a deceptively simple appearance. No visible weapons emplacements were apparent, though several ports along its hull suggested concealed systems. They're hailing us, Commander, the communications officer reported. Accept transmission. Let us meet these humans. The screen shifted to show a human with dark skin wearing a blue uniform adorned with modest insignia. The being sat in what appeared to be a command center, expression composed, and posture straight. This is Captain Ilara Chen of the UES Horizon. You have entered sovereign human territory. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. Krell studied the human with interest. Their species had a simplistic bilateral symmetry: 2 arms, 2 legs, and a single head with forward-facing eyes. Nothing remarkable. He straightened in his chair, displaying his full height. I am Commander Vex Krell of the Valderan Dominion. Your system now falls under our protection and jurisdiction. Transmit your surrender protocols and prepare your leaders to receive terms of integration. The human captain's expression remained unchanged. Commander Krell, I believe there's been a misunderstanding. Human space is not open for claim or conquest. I must ask you to withdraw your fleet immediately. Krell's mandibles clicked with amusement. Captain Chen, you face 30 Valderan warships with a single vessel. The Dominion respects courage, but not foolishness. Stand down your weapons and prepare to be boarded. That would be unwise, Chen replied, her voice remaining level. This is your final warning. The Horizon is fully capable of defending human sovereignty. Withdraw your fleet now. The audacity of the human stirred Krell's temper. Perhaps a demonstration is required. Weapons officer, target their propulsion systems. Disable only. The tactical officer acknowledged the command, and a moment later, a bright energy beam lanced out from the Valderan flagship toward the human vessel. What happened next defied Krell's expectations. The horizon seemed to shimmer briefly before the beam could connect. The energy discharge passed harmlessly through the space where the ship had been a fraction of a second earlier. The human vessel reappeared 50 kilometers starboard, having moved with impossible speed. What happened? Krell demanded, rising from his chair. Unknown, Commander, the tactical officer stammered. They appeared to utilize some form of short-range teleportation or spatial displacement. Before Krell could issue new orders, the human ship responded. Not with wild return fire as expected, but with precision. 3 small projectiles launched from concealed ports on the Horizon's hull. They moved at velocities that strained the Valderan sensors to track. Incoming, shouted the tactical officer. The projectiles detonated before reaching the Valderan vessels, creating 3 spheres of distorted space. The distortions expanded rapidly, engulfing the forward section of the fleet. Ship systems within the affected area failed instantly, weapons, shields, and propulsion going offline simultaneously. Report. Krell bellowed as warning signals flashed across the command center. 7 ships affected, Commander. All systems inoperative. The projectiles released some form of localized electromagnetic disruption field, but with properties we've never encountered. It's bypassing our shielding entirely. On the main screen, Captain Chen's face reappeared. As you can see, Commander Krell, we are not defenseless. The effects on your vessels are temporary, this time. I strongly suggest you reconsider your position. Krell's pride warred with his tactical sense. This single vessel had neutralized nearly a quarter of his fleet without sustaining damage. Either human technology was far more advanced than intelligence suggested, or their ships possessed specialized capabilities developed specifically against invaders. All vessels converge on the human ship, Krell ordered. Surround and overwhelm. Use all weapon systems. The remaining Valderan ships moved with practiced precision, forming a sphere around the horizon. It was a classic Valderan encirclement maneuver. No target, no matter how agile, could evade coordinated fire from every direction. All ships in position, Commander, reported the tactical officer. Fire, Krell commanded. 23 ships fired simultaneously, a barrage of energy weapons and projectiles converging on the human vessel. For a moment, Krell believed victory was assured. Then the impossible happened again. The space around the horizon distorted, bending the incoming fire away from the ship. Some beams intersected with others, creating explosive feedback that damaged the firing vessels. The human ship then accelerated, moving in patterns that defied conventional physics, weaving through the Valderan formation with impossible agility. As it passed each ship, systems failed in succession. not through explosive damage, but targeted electronic warfare that left the vessels intact but incapacitated. Within minutes, half the Valderan fleet drifted powerless in space. "This is impossible," Krell muttered, watching the tactical display in disbelief. "Commander," the sensor officer called out urgently, "we're detecting multiple new signatures at the system edge. Configurations match the human vessel, but larger." Krell stared at the sensor readings as 5 new contacts appeared, emerging from what appeared to be folded space rather than conventional hyperspace transitions. The newcomers were significantly larger than the Horizon, with one vessel nearly matching the flagship's size. "They're hailing us again," the communications officer announced. The main screen shifted to show an older human in a darker uniform with more elaborate insignia. Behind them stood Captain Chen. "Commander Krell, I am Admiral Helena Mercer of the United Earth Defense Force. Your unprovoked aggression against the Horizon constitutes an act of war against humanity. However, we are prepared to resolve this situation without further bloodshed if you withdraw immediately." Krell's mind raced. The intelligence had been catastrophically wrong. These humans possessed technology that outmatched Valderan capabilities in several crucial areas. What should have been a simple demonstration of Dominion power had become a potential disaster. "A moment to confer with my officers, Admiral," Krell requested, signaling to cut the transmission temporarily. As the screen went dark, he turned to Analyst Mira. "Explain this discrepancy. How did we so grossly underestimate their capabilities?" Mira's scales had paled with distress. "Commander, I've been analyzing their communication patterns during this encounter. It appears we made a critical error in our intelligence gathering. What we intercepted was their civilian network, scientific and commercial communications. Their military systems operate on entirely separate protocols, heavily encrypted and isolated." "And the technology?" Krell demanded. "Based on what we're witnessing, humans appear to have developed along a different technological path than the Dominion. Where we focused on raw power and conventional physics, they've explored exotic physics applications, spatial manipulation, targeted electromagnetic disruption, and defensive systems that redirect rather than absorb energy." The tactical officer interrupted. "Commander, the human reinforcements have surrounded our remaining operational vessels. We are outmaneuvered and potentially outgunned." Krell stared at the tactical display, the reality of the situation becoming clear. His first contact with humans would also be his first defeat if he persisted. The Dominion had never retreated, but neither had it faced such an unexpected technological disparity. "Reopen communications," he ordered, his pride giving way to pragmatism. The reckoning. Admiral Mercer's face reappeared on the main screen, her expression neither triumphant nor hostile, merely resolute. "Have you reached a decision, Commander Krell?" she asked. Krell fought to maintain his composure. "Admiral Mercer, there appears to have been a significant misunderstanding. The Valderan Dominion approached your territory with peaceful intent to establish relations." A slight raise of the Admiral's eyebrow suggested she wasn't convinced. "Is that why you fired upon our patrol vessel after explicitly being asked to withdraw?" "A regrettable error in judgment," Krell conceded, his mandibles tight with suppressed fury at being cornered into diplomacy from a position of weakness. "Perhaps we can discuss terms for de-escalation." "The terms are simple," Mercer replied. "Your fleet will withdraw from human space immediately. You will provide technical assistance to your disabled vessels as needed. Within 30 standard days, the Valderan Dominion will send diplomatic representatives, no more than one ship with limited armaments, to our neutral station at Proxima Centauri for proper first contact protocols." As Mercer spoke, one of the human vessels moved alongside the nearest disabled Valderan cruiser. Rather than opening fire, it extended what appeared to be a utility tether, restoring power to the stricken vessel. As a gesture of good faith, Mercer continued, "We're providing emergency power to your affected ships. This should allow them to restore their systems within the hour." The display split to show the disabled cruiser's systems gradually coming back online, This wasn't the behavior of a species intent on destruction, but rather one demonstrating both capability and restraint. Krell considered his options. The Dominion Council would view withdrawal as failure, but complete defeat would be worse. Very well, Admiral. We will withdraw once our vessels are operational. I will communicate your terms to my government. A wise decision, Commander, Mercer nodded. Captain Chen will coordinate the recovery efforts. I suggest you use this time to learn more about the species you intended to subjugate. You might find us more complex than your intelligence suggested. The transmission ended, leaving Krell to contemplate the magnitude of his miscalculation. As the recovery operations began, he summoned Analyst Mira to his private chamber adjacent to the command center. I want everything, he demanded. How did we miss this? What else don't we know about these humans? Mira hesitated before activating her data terminal. Commander, I've been compiling information from direct observation and what the humans are allowing us to detect. Their technological development differs fundamentally from the standard progression we've observed in other species. The display showed comparative timelines of technological development. Most species, including Valderans, develop technology in a predictable sequence: mastery of chemical energy, then nuclear, then antimatter, and finally unified field manipulation. Humans appear to have developed several branches simultaneously, with particular emphasis on adaptive systems. Explain, Krell ordered. Their vessels employ layered defensive systems. Rather than relying on increasingly powerful shields, they use spatial distortion to avoid hits entirely, quantum entanglement for instantaneous communication, and targeted countermeasures for specific threats. Mira brought up sensor readings of the horizon. This patrol vessel alone contains technology we've only theorized. The most concerning aspect is how efficiently they integrate these systems. Krell studied the data with growing unease. And their weapons? Primarily focused on system disruption rather than destruction. Mira explained. They could have destroyed our vessels but chose incapacitation instead. This suggests either ethical constraints or strategic preservation of potential intelligence sources. A deeper concern formed in Krell's mind. Could they have developed these capabilities specifically as countermeasures against invasion? Mira's scales rippled, the Valderan equivalent of a solemn nod. I believe so, Commander. Their history shows evidence of significant internal conflicts that would drive rapid military innovation. More importantly, I've detected references in their communications to previous encounters with other spacefaring entities. This revelation startled Krell. They've met other species before us. At least 2 distinct, non-human civilizations. Mira confirmed. The communications suggest at least one of these encounters was hostile. It appears humans have been preparing for encounters like ours for decades. On the command deck, recovery operations continued as the human vessels systematically restored power to the disabled Valderan ships. Through observation ports, Krell could see engineers in environmental suits moving with practiced efficiency. They weren't fumbling with unfamiliar technology. They understood precisely how to disable and restore Valderan systems. The implications were disturbing. Humanity hadn't just developed advanced technology. They had developed it specifically to counter threats like the Dominion. Their apparent isolation wasn't a sign of limited reach, but a deliberate strategic posture. Commander, the communications officer called from the command deck. Captain Chen is requesting to come aboard to discuss the withdrawal protocols. Krell straightened his posture. Prepare a reception in the diplomatic chamber. Full honors. Minutes later, Captain Chen arrived with 2 officers. Up close, humans were more physically imposing than Krell had initially judged. Chen moved with a confident grace that spoke of both military discipline and personal authority. Captain Chen, Krell greeted formally. I appreciate your assistance with our vessels. Commander, Chen nodded. Admiral Mercer has authorized me to provide technical specifications that will help prevent any unfortunate resonance between our technologies during your withdrawal. We've discovered that certain Valderan energy frequencies can trigger unintended responses in our defensive systems. The casual revelation was telling. The humans had studied Valderan technology extensively enough to understand potential interactions. Krell accepted the data crystal she offered, noting the confident way she navigated his ship, showing neither fear nor excessive curiosity. "I must ask," Krell ventured, "how did a patrol vessel like yours manage to neutralize so many of our ships?" Chen's expression remained neutral. "The Horizon is what we call a Sentinel-class vessel, Commander. While not primarily designed for combat, it carries integrated defensive and countermeasure systems specifically developed for first contact scenarios." "You expected hostility?" Krell asked. "We prepared for all possibilities," Chen corrected. "Humanity learned early that peaceful intentions aren't universal. The Horizon could have destroyed your leading vessels, but that wasn't our objective. We prefer to establish boundaries without unnecessary bloodshed." As they discussed withdrawal protocols, Krell gained a clearer understanding of human capabilities. Their technological advancement wasn't merely surprising. It was humbling. The Dominion had expanded through predictable star systems, encountering species with straightforward technological progression. Humans represented something different, a species that had faced adversity and adapted in unexpected ways. 4 hours later, the Valderan fleet prepared to depart. All ships had been restored to functional status, though weapons systems remained offline, a precaution the humans insisted upon until the fleet cleared their territory. From the observation deck, Krell watched as the human vessels maintained their position, a silent reminder of his failure. The largest vessel, named Resolute according to their communications, dwarfed his previous estimates of human capabilities. Its hull featured minimal ornamentation, but sensor readings detected energy signatures that suggested formidable defensive and offensive systems. "All vessels report ready for hyperspace transition, Commander," his first officer announced. Krell nodded. "Signal the withdrawal." As the Valderan fleet engaged their drives, retreating from human space, Krell composed his report to the Dominion Council. How would he explain that the easy conquest they had anticipated had instead revealed a species technologically superior in several crucial domains? How would the Council respond to the recommendation that expansion toward human territory be indefinitely postponed? The implications extended beyond this single encounter. If humans represented a new category of species, one that developed along unpredictable technological paths, then the Dominion's entire expansion strategy required reevaluation. The galaxy might contain other surprises, other civilizations that appeared primitive until challenged. In his private chamber, Krell reviewed the sensor logs one final time. The human vessels hadn't pursued, hadn't exploited their advantage beyond ensuring the Valderan withdrawal. This restraint suggested confidence rather than uncertainty. "Commander," Analyst Mira interrupted his thoughts, "I've completed translation of the data Captain Chen provided. It contains not just technical specifications, but a historical overview of human development. I believe they intended us to understand them better." "And what have you learned?" Krell asked. Their homeworld experienced multiple global conflicts before achieving unification. Their technology evolved rapidly in response to these pressures. More significantly, they encountered a hostile species 80 years ago that attempted colonization of their territory. "What happened to this species?" Krell asked, already suspecting the answer. "The humans don't specify, but they mention establishing clear boundaries that have since been respected. Their defensive technologies appear to have developed substantially following this encounter." The implications were clear. Humanity had faced invasion before and had not merely survived but adapted. The Dominion's standard approach to expansion, overwhelming force against technologically inferior opponents, would have been disastrous against such an adversary. As the Valderan fleet entered hyperspace, leaving human territory behind, Krell made a decision that would alter the course of Dominion history. His report would recommend not just postponement of expansion in this sector, but a fundamental reassessment of their approach to first contact. The galaxy contained more than just simple prey and predictable opponents. Some species, like these humans, had evolved through adversity into something more dangerous, not because they sought conflict, but because they had learned to end it decisively when necessary. The Valderan Dominion had entered human space expecting easy conquest, and instead received a lesson in humility. It was a lesson Krell would ensure his people did not forget. In the vast darkness between stars, as his fleet traveled home in defeat, Commander Vex Krell wondered what other surprises awaited the Dominion in the galaxy's unexplored reaches. For the first time in his career, the thought filled him not with anticipation but with caution.